You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 737 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, and that song you're hearing right now is, of course, Leave the Lights On from our good friends in Passafire. You can check those guys out anywhere you get your music, and the Rangers coming off of what can only be described as a disappointing start to the post-holiday break here portion of the season, or whatever you want to call it. The Rangers fall 4-0 at home against the Washington Capitals. Both teams were on fire coming into this game. Obviously, the Capitals were able to seemingly carry that momentum with them through the holiday break, more so than the Rangers were able to, despite the fact that the Capitals missing quite a few key players for their team. They still come out and they take care of business, and they beat the Rangers 4-0. I would argue that this game was a little bit better for the Rangers than the 4-0 final score would indicate. Now, don't get me wrong, it was not a good game or even an adequate game by any stretch of the imagination for the New York Rangers. They were not very good at all in this one. But, you know, for a team that got shut out, I thought they at least created a decent amount of scoring opportunities throughout this game, at least the first half of this game. They didn't really do much of anything in the third period or late in the second period, but we'll get to the reasons why in just a little bit there. A lot of errant passes, though, by the Rangers. A lot of shots going wide, even shots from some pretty high-danger areas on the ice going wide of the net, and just making it a little bit too easy on Darcy Kuemper and the Washington Capitals. Now, Kuemper, of course, got the shutout. Can't take anything away. Did a nice job there. Made some good saves for sure. But the Rangers really kind of were their own worst enemy when it came to just not being able to hit the net. I mean, nearly half of their shots went wide on this night, and I think they said the Capitals only put about 5 shots wide of the net. So that's kind of gives you an idea of how this one played out, but there's a lot to talk about. Like I said, one thing that I definitely want to focus on here at the start is the controversial line changes made by Gerard Gallant in the middle of this game. Also want to talk about some of the refs' greatest hits, because this was not a banner night for the Zebras at all. Going to get into a key sequence in the second period, which actually kind of coincided with the line changes, and also going to get into the current line combinations at practice, one of which will cause everybody to collectively lose their minds. This is assuming that you haven't already seen it on social media or anything like that. And the other elephant in the room right now is that my family and I recently had COVID. I'm not going to get into it in too much detail today. I talked about it in the last couple of episodes here, but as you can probably tell by my voice, not 100% yet. The good news is my family is recovering, and everybody's certainly on their way to getting better. Apparently my voice is going to be the last thing that goes back to normal, though. So going to do my best to fight through this. Might be a shorter episode. We shall see. But Gerard Gallant, after this game, he called it garbage. He said it was a garbage game by the Rangers. And it's funny because there's times where we have, as a fan base, as just watchers of hockey, watch the Rangers in action and seen them just have an awful performance, and then he'll actually kind of defend them a little bit. I want to say the game against the Blackhawks, the game that the Rangers lost 5-2, the game that Trouba fired his helmet into the boards, I think that was the game where Gallant actually kind of stood up for them a little bit and thought they played well. They didn't play well at all in this game. Then you get a game like this where, yes, it's not perfect, but to go out there and call it garbage, I don't think I would go that far either. And I guess, Gallant, in believing that his team was playing a garbage game, putting up a garbage effort, whatever you want to call it, garbage, it's garbage, he felt it necessary to change line combinations in the middle of the second period. And I didn't agree with this at all. First of all, let's just start with the line combinations that the Rangers went with going into this game. Panarin, Mika, Kravtsov. And as Anthony Scultori pointed out, and Scultori, he does a great job with Forever Blue Shirts. He's been a guest on this show a couple of times in the past. Kind of a weird time to go with Kravtsov on the top line, because it would mean that he would be matched up against Ovechkin for a good amount of the night. So a little bit of a weird night to take this line combination for a test drive. But I guess it all ended up being a moot point anyway because the Rangers, shuffled the line combinations after this in the second period. We will get into that. The second line was the kid line. Third line, Kreider, Trocheck, Vesey. Fourth line, Goodrow, Brodzinski, and Gauthier. So Blais remains a healthy scratch, second game in a row after that really bad penalty against the Penguins. But then, in the second period, Gallant decided that it was time to basically just shuffle the deck. And I didn't agree with this at all. I mean, we can go through the line combinations that he went with here. You had Mika, Kreider, and Goodrow. You had Trocheck, Kakko, and Panarin. But honestly, does any of this stuff even really matter? I mean, we're at the point, we're getting into John Tortorella territory here. I've joked before on this podcast how, at times, when Tortorella was the coach of the Rangers, I would not even bother learning what the line combinations were because he would be changing them, just a couple of minutes into the game. And then he'd change them again, and it got to the point where it was just like, I don't even have the energy to try to keep up with whatever John Tortorella is doing because the line combinations were constantly different. We're getting into that territory with Gerard Gallant. Now, when the Rangers were going through that awful stretch there, and they lost 6 out of 7 or whatever it was, they were just playing awful hockey, I defended Gallant a little bit, changing the line combinations as often as he did because the Rangers were basically at that time just kind of feeling for the light switch in the dark. Just god-awful hockey, uninspired hockey, and he's looking for some kind of magic combination to get things turned around and get things moving in the right direction and just kind of spark this team in one way or another. So when they were struggling, I get it. But here, it just didn't make any sense at all. First of all, the Rangers, you have the holiday break, right? So I think a little bit of rustiness is to be expected. And I realize the Washington Capitals, they had the same break that the Rangers did, so you can't use that as like a complete excuse. But the bottom line, it's not unreasonable to believe that a lot of these players are going to be rusty. It's going to take, a period, 2 periods, maybe even an entire game to get everybody back into the swing of things. And so that's why I think if you're a coach, you let things play out. You don't get all trigger happy with, the juggling of the lines. And on top of that, the Rangers had no longer been struggling before this break. They had won 8 out of 9 games. So I think the line combinations, as they've been constructed throughout that winning streak, they've earned a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. They've earned a little bit more leeway, a little bit more rope, whatever you want to call it. They've, I would think, earned the trust of the coaching staff. And okay, if there's a lackluster period or two, which is what we pretty much got here, they would still be allowed to work their way through it, find their game, and start firing on all cylinders. And the funny thing about this, right before Gallant messed with the line combinations and moved everybody up the lineup and down the lineup and left and right and everything else, that's right when the Rangers were starting to find their game a little bit. For the first time all night, the Rangers were they were skating better than they had at any point during the night. They were starting to win some 50-50 pucks, beginning to make some more crisp passes. They were playing more physical than they had played all night up to that point, and just starting to get it together, starting to look like they're playing New York Ranger hockey. And keep in mind, at this point in the game, it's getting a little bit late in the second period, yes, but the Rangers are still just down 1-0. It's anybody's game, and having watched this team recently, as a lot of you have as well, you start to almost feel like, okay, the Rangers, yeah, we're down 1-0. You know what? We got these guys right where we want them. The Garden's starting to come alive a little bit. Fans are starting to make a little bit more noise. Rangers are finding their game. We'll get this game tied before the second intermission. We'll go into the third, 1-1, and we'll do what the Rangers do and find a way to get the job done here. That's kind of the feeling that I had, and it was kind of derailed by the coach because instead of just continuing to let the Rangers build off of what they were starting to build there and, playing better hockey as this game progressed, he basically, as I tweeted last night, tried to reinvent the wheel, did all these different line combinations, and again, I don't even care what the new line combinations are. I don't even have time to analyze them because by the time I figure out what the line combinations are, and okay, well, maybe this makes sense because, this guy plays physical. He'll complement the skill guy over there. These two guys seem to have good chemistry together. It might be interesting to see them on the same line. By the time I process all that, Gallant will change the line an additional 3 times. So there's not really much point in even trying to learn what the line combinations are right now. But the biggest issue I have with it is not what the new line combinations were. I don't even care about that. It's just the fact that he took what had been working before the break, 8 out of 9 wins, 8 wins in 9 games, and decided to blow the whole thing up just because the Rangers weren't quite creating enough offense. They didn't have any goals. That's the better way to phrase it. It's not that the Rangers weren't creating any offense, because they actually, for a team that got shut out, I thought created a decent amount of scoring chances in this game. The shots just weren't there, shooting wide of the net on a fairly common basis there. but he just blew it up just because of the fact that the Rangers had 0 goals. I mean, that seems like it was pretty much the long and short of it, and didn't agree with it. Thought these line combinations have earned the right to kind of fight through it, work through their struggles, and try to get this game turned in the Rangers' favor, which they very well might have been able to do, but they weren't given that opportunity because Gallant, once again, pretty much just blew up the line combinations. And after he did that, everything just completely fell apart for the Rangers. They gave up 2 goals late in the second period and basically created no offense after these line combinations were once again altered by the coach. So I like Gerard Gallant. I've gotten a bat for him on here. I, for the most part, believe I will continue to stand up for him because, there's a lot of piling on, and I think he gets a little too much criticism. But I also got to be fair here. I did not agree with pretty much any of these adjustments that he made in the middle of the game here. Just did not think it was the right time and did not think that it was called for. But we're going to continue talking about all this key sequence in the second period after the line changes were made and a whole bunch of other stuff too. But first, just got to let everybody know, today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league. From pro football to college bowl season to basketball and hockey, we've got it all at BetOnline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. We just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. All right, so I've pretty much said my piece on, the line combinations and why I essentially just did not believe that they needed to happen. But I think it's also important for us to kind of examine exactly what went down in this game after the line combinations occurred, because the Rangers just completely lost their mojo, and a game that was just 1-0 as late as 3 minutes remaining in the second period is then 3-0 by the time you go into the third period. Not that the game's over at that point, but man, you got a heck of a hole to climb out of by the time you're down by 3 goals, and it's just demoralizing to go from a 1-goal game to a 3-goal game in such a short span there. But right before the line combinations were switched, the Rangers had a really good 6 or 7 or 8 minute stretch there, creating some scoring opportunities, looking like they were maybe just one chance away from finding the equalizer. Unfortunately, it did not happen, but then all the line changes occurred, and you've got a rush for the Capitals pretty much right out of nowhere, a 4-on-2, a couple of short passes. The puck kind of went on net, and Igor knocked it away, but Gustafsson was right there in front of the net. He puts it home with about 3 minutes remaining in the second period, and he scores. And then the Rangers challenge for goalie interference, and this is just one of several questionable calls by the refs here. I mean, this one isn't really in their hands. It goes to Toronto, and they take a look at it, and they assess everything and do whatever they do there. But basically, Igor Shesterkin, there was some contact there in front of the net while he was trying to make the save. And so the Rangers challenge for goalie interference goes to the review. And when the ref announces, his findings or the findings by the fine people in the booth at Toronto or whatever that is, whatever the verbiage is, he basically went out there and he said that no contact with the goalie occurred, which is just not true. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that, this is the type of goal that 100% should have been overturned and should have been disallowed, but to go on the microphone as the referee there and say that no contact occurred is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, there was clearly contact between Igor and the Capitals player there. So I don't know what these reviews anymore. I never really know for sure what they're going to come up with or what the reasoning is going to be or, what constitutes, undeniable proof or anything like that. But I do know that there was certainly contact between, Igor Shesterkin and the Capitals player there. But the bottom line is, the Rangers, they do all these line changes. And I know Gallant has had some success when he's, mix and matched recently. But they had settled into a lineup, not too long ago, and it had been working really well. So again, I just don't think there was any reason to blow everything up in this game the way that the Rangers did. And of course, since the Rangers did not win the challenge, it's a bench minor, and it's a power play for the Capitals. And then, the Rangers actually killed it off. But final minute of the second period there, you've got Eller driving to the net, He rips a shot, makes it 3-0 with just 36 seconds to go in the second period. The Rangers had a turnover in the neutral zone, and Eller pretty much just did whatever he felt like doing here. He kind of just skated right up the center of the ice, put a couple of forwards, it looked like, and Trouba was there. He was in his way. Kind of looked like Eller might have used Trouba as a screen here. Either way, he releases the shot, and he scores. And like I said, 1-0 lead for the Capitals becomes a 3-0 lead, and I think it's due in part to Gallant just being a little bit too trigger-happy when it comes to these line combinations. Yes, the Rangers could have played better after the line changes were made, but I also got to believe it's somewhat demoralizing as a player. You just have a rough period and a half, and the coach is going to reinvent the wheel, and everybody's getting demoted, and even the guys who aren't getting demoted have 2 new line mates, and you got to find chemistry with them. They had something building there. They had some momentum going, and it was taken away from them. And you got pretty much to start from scratch at that point because all the line combinations were different. So, again, this was not a shuffle the deck kind of a game for the Rangers. To me, this was just a stick with it kind of a game for the Rangers because the Rangers had not been great through the first half of this game, but they were right there in it, and they were starting to find their mojo a little bit, and again, got taken away, and it's just unfortunate. Who knows what would have happened in this game had these line combinations just gotten a couple more shifts together and a couple more chances to figure it out. But we're going to keep going in just a second here. Going to talk about some of the refs' greatest hits in this game. Not that I think that, the Rangers would have won this game with better officiating. I mean, the refs weren't great either way, but we will get into that in just a second. All right, so the refs in this game. For starters, in the first period, the Capitals end up with a 5-on-3 for 1 minute and 40 seconds. It all started when Ryan Lindgren was called for slashing. And I emphasize that he was called for slashing because Ryan Lindgren did not slash anybody. Vincent Trocheck slashed somebody, and the refs, I guess, just got confused about who did what. They weren't even really that close to each other on the ice, so I don't really know how that happened. I mean, look, if there's a big scrum and sticks are up in the air and, guys are kind of like fighting for position, there's like 5 or 6 players in the middle of something, and you see a slash by, a player wearing a blue shirt, then I can at least understand this. But these two weren't anywhere near each other on the play. So Lindgren was beside himself when he was called for this, and I don't blame him. And you might hear that and think, like, at first glance, well, it's a penalty on one or the other. I mean, what difference does it make who they call it on? Well, Ryan Lindgren is somebody that the Rangers are going to want out there on the penalty kill. So is Vincent Trocheck, but Trocheck's a forward, Lindgren's a defenseman, and probably the second best defenseman the Rangers have right now, and certainly he's more important on a penalty kill than Vincent Trocheck. Trocheck does a great job with it too, but there's other forwards you can go to and other really good penalty killers you feel just as good about. Guys like Mika and Kreider and Vesey, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Goodrow. But yeah, Lindgren is somebody you certainly want to be available when you're on the penalty kill, and especially maybe even when you're down 5-on-3 as well, because the Capitals ended up with a 5-on-3. Kreider was called for holding Ovechkin, and of course the Capitals then convert. We also had a situation where Filipino had a nice rush up the ice. He was hooked by Ovechkin. Now, Ovechkin did drop his stick on this, but I don't really care. I mean, it certainly looked like he, hooked Hedl and prevented him from kind of, taking off through the neutral zone as much as he could have. Then the third period, you had Adam Fox. He drew a penalty. It was called against Connor Sheary, high sticking, and the refs actually got this one. But what was funny about this was it was called by the ref that was in the neutral zone, the guy that was right next to Fox and Sheary, and seemingly it happened right in front of him. He did not end up calling the penalty. And Fox, even though the penalty was called, he was asking the ref, like, I think pretty much like, what are you looking at? Like, how are you not calling that? The guy in the neutral zone saw it. So that was another example. We also had Julien Gauthier. Now, he played well in this game. Another strong showing for Julien Gauthier. He came close to scoring a goal. They reviewed it. Puck never completely crossed the line, so that call stood, the no-goal call. But also in the third period here, Gauthier is chasing the defenseman, picks his pocket, forces a turnover right there on the doorstep, right in front of the Washington net. And Gauthier is immediately knocked onto the ice because Irwin, the defenseman from whom he stole the puck, used his right leg to basically just sweep Gauthier's left leg out from underneath him. Very bad no call. Another one that happened right in front of the referee. Bad night for the officiating. And again, I'm not going to say that, a 4-goal loss would have turned into a win of any kind for the Rangers if the refs had been a little bit better, but the refs need to be better than this. I suppose they were rusty, just like everybody else. I'll try to give them at least a little bit of a break here, but just kind of for our own amusement, I just kind of want to go through this comedy of errors from the officiating team on this night. And I am also completely done with the reverse retro jerseys, if I have not made that clear, because nothing good happens for the Rangers when they wear the Lady Liberty jerseys. And here's another example of it. The Rangers have won 8 out of 9, looking to get rolling after the holiday break, and they wear these jerseys and they lose 4-0. So no more. And I for sure, I would have to look into this more. If the Rangers make the playoffs this year, you cannot even think about having those jerseys. Forget about the Rangers actually wearing them. They cannot even be in the building. They cannot be in Madison Square Garden. In fact, if I'm a team playing the Rangers, I would leave them in the away locker room or something like that, just to mess with them a little bit. Keep those jerseys far, 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 far away from this team. Nothing good happens when the Rangers wear them. The other thing I just want to mention real quick here, every season, every offseason, there's so many people that say the 3 teams in the Eastern Conference that have kind of held on the fort for such a long time, the Capitals, the Penguins, and the Bruins, every single year I have to hear about how, these teams, their time is about to end, and the fall is going to be swift, and it's going to be hard for all 3 of these teams. All 3 of these teams continue to be in the mix every single season. The Capitals, the Penguins, and the Bruins. They are the 3 cockroaches of the Eastern Conference. They just never go away. They never die. And look at the season they're all having right now. Penguins are feeling it after a bad start. The Bruins have had the best record in the Eastern Conference for most of the season, and the Capitals, despite all these injuries they have, they're right in the mix of everything too, and obviously playing a lot better recently. So these 3 teams just will not die. Somebody let me know when it's for real, because every offseason for at least 3 or 4 years now, we've been hearing about how these teams are going to start falling off. Just never happens. And as far as the line combinations at practice, we mentioned that we would get to these at the very end of today's episode. You've got Mika centering Kreider and Kakko on the top line, Trocheck centering Panarin and Goodrow on the second line, third line, Hedl centering Krasov on the left wing, Gauthier on the right wing, and the fourth line, Brodzinski with Vesey on the right wing, and on the left wing, Lafreniere/Blais. The fact that Lafreniere is on the fourth line is troubling enough. The fact that this seems to indicate that possibly he could be a healthy scratch, while guys like Sammy Blais, Johnny Brodzinski, Jimmy Vesey, Julian Gauthier, that can't happen. That can't happen, right? There's no way they would go that far. Do you really believe that Sammy Blais and Johnny Brodzinski and Julian Gauthier are more important to this team than Alexis Lafreniere? I would hope the answer would be no, but I guess we'll wait and see. I'm a little bit nervous about this one, and I'm sure a lot of you are as well. Anyway, that'll pretty much do it for today, guys. In our next episode, we will take a look at the World Juniors, and most specifically, the Rangers that are playing at the World Juniors, but we'll also look at the tournament as a whole. That'll be a lot of fun, always a good time covering that tournament for an episode or 2. And then after that, Rangers going to be back in action on Thursday, and if my laptop felt like loading here, I could tell you who they're going to play. On Thursday, they will be at Tampa Bay at 7 o'clock, so that'll be a fun game as well. Obviously, Eastern Conference final matchup, and these 2 teams have not played each other since opening night this year, which was, of course, a Ranger win. But that will do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter at LO_NY_Rangers, and definitely subscribe to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I'll see you next time. Thanks for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On Sports Today. Peter Bukowski brings you the biggest stories from around the sports world in 20 minutes. Get the analysis and opinions before anyone else with our local and national experts and insiders. Locked On Sports Today podcast, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.